Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another installment of Scout Selections here on May 4th. It is currently Saturday. Before, just so we can get a quick, just a quick announcement, there will be no play of the day. It's not because of the current slump that we are in or anything like that. It's just simply because I've just been too busy with final exams to give any play the specific analysis that usually requires for me to feel confident enough to give it as a play of the day with finals and stuff. So with that being said, I will still be giving out my leans that I usually give out every day, but there will be no play of the day. So if you were expecting one of those, sorry, but it is what it is. Thanks a lot, Jimmy. I appreciate it. But anyway, so we will dive right into it. The first game that we'll be covering is the NBA, as there's only one NBA playoff game today, which is occurring at roughly 8:30 Eastern time, and it's between the Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets. Golden State is currently up 2-0 in the series. And game one was extremely close. Game two, Golden State was close for a little while, but Golden State was able to pull away late and win relatively convincingly. The total in this game started at 222. It's down to roughly 220.5 market wide. And Houston started as a 3.5-point favorite, down to a 3-point favorite in this game. In terms of sides, it's kind of a difficult call because of the fact that Golden State has looked so much better than Houston so far this series. But Houston is in must-win mode. And if you follow the current trend of teams that are down 2-0 in the third game, they typically do really well in the first half. So my main lean on that game would be the Rockets with the spread in the first half. So that would be my main play there. In terms of the over-under, I'd have to lean to the under in that game. It's down to 220.5. Game two did go over, but game two went over because you had roughly 16 points or 12 points in the last 30 seconds or so. So based on that, it was a miracle that game two actually even went over. And in terms of the referees, I thought they were going to overdo it in game two, call a bunch of excessive fouls, et cetera, et cetera. But overall, I thought their game was actually reffed pretty well. And I still think that they're not going to be giving Houston all of these foul calls. And I think that the refs have kind of been fed up with the players with the amount of complaining that's been going on for each call after every single possession. So I will lean to the under in that game because I think that both teams, especially in the second halves, have definitely stepped up defensively. And these teams, I feel like, know each other by the back of their hand, and they are going to try to limit the efficiency of both teams offensively. And I think this game will finish under. I think it'll finish somewhere in the realm of the 210s. I think it'll be close, but I will lean to the under, and I will lean to the Rockets in the first half with the spread, just based on long-term trends, and that's one of those with a team down 2-0 returning home. Game three, they typically do really well at home in the first half. So I will be leaning to that and the under in that game. But moving on to the NHL playoffs, and I'll go into a couple of baseball games really quickly. You have the Columbus Blue Jackets taking on the Boston Bruins at roughly 7:15 Eastern time, I should say. Bruins opened up at a minus 137 favorite, down to roughly 135 in some spots, and even up to 145 at Bovada. So it's kind of spread out depending on what line you get. And the total in this game is still at 5.5 at roughly minus 130 with heavy juice to the under. Now, in terms of this game, I will lean to Columbus, and I will lean to the over. In this series, I feel like the best approach that you can possibly have. Yeah, Jimmy, first quarter works too. I just know that the trend itself works particularly well for the first half as a whole. So first quarter could definitely work, and I think that that makes a lot of sense. But in terms of the overall trend, the trend is pretty much exclusively for the first half and doesn't always apply to the first quarter. Golden State can come out hot. Durant's unguardable. But overall, I think the first quarter or the first half with the Rockets and the spread should make a lot of sense and should be very profitable. But moving on, so the hockey games I was saying, Columbus, I'm going to be leaning towards in this game. Boston, must-win game in game four as they were down 2-1 in the series and they were able to win 4-1. I simply just think Columbus just didn't play well, and the Bruins kind of played with a certain physicality that the Columbus wasn't accustomed to seeing. That's why the Bruins put David Backes back into the lineup, and it definitely paid dividends. I think Columbus and Coach Tortorella will make some adjustments, and I think that similarly to what happened in the first series, I would not be surprised to see Boston potentially lose this game at home to go down 3-2 to go back to Columbus, like what they did against the Maple Leafs. I think there's enough value here to look at Columbus. Based on how these teams have played and how it's 2-2 so far and how I personally think the series is going 7 games, The question that I have for you in this is, even if you don't know if Columbus is going to win the game, do you really trust laying a minus 140 with either of these two teams in this series? Because I don't. I think if you're going to take the Bruins, you might take regulation, but the games both went to overtime in Boston. So Columbus has played well in Boston so far this series. I simply just think that there's no way you can end up taking the Bruins at minus 140. If it was minus 120, yeah, maybe you take it. But I think the line's too high, and I think there's too much value on Columbus. And in terms of the over, I think Bobrovsky, he wasn't great last game. Some of the goals weren't his fault because Columbus kept taking penalties, and both teams seemed to have a plethora of power play opportunities. Tuukka Rask was good, but he has been a little bit streaky in the series, and Columbus's power play with Duchesne and Panarin have still been really solid. And Boston looks like they might have figured out some way to get to Bobrovsky in that. Jared, question from you. The Warriors spread. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You take the Rockets spread in the first half. That was the point that I was trying to make. If you want to take the Warriors, you can, just because of the fact that they're really good. But the fact that the Rockets are actually favored in this game looks a little bit sketchy, and it makes me believe that the Rockets will come out focused, and I think they will get the job done in the first half at least. But anyway, I will link to the over in that because you still have the empty netters at the end of the game. And I still think that this game will be close throughout. I think it could be 3-2, and you could get an empty netter involved. So I will lean to Columbus, and I will lean to the over. And the late game at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, you have Colorado Avalanche versus the San Jose Sharks. We ended up losing on the play of the day a couple of days ago with the San Jose Sharks in regulation in Game 4. Colorado was great. Grubauer was great in net. He definitely answered the calling. And in terms of this game, San Jose is favored by minus 135. And the over-under is at 5.5, unlike the usual 6 that we've been seeing, with juice to the over. In this series, I still like San Jose as a team here, and I think that they will play a lot better. The only issue is whether or not they'll be able to solve Grubauer. So far, they were able to do that in roughly the first 3 games of the series, and then Grubauer had an absolute gem of a performance. I know that the floodgates opened late and Colorado scored 3 goals, with 2 of them coming in the third period, but that game was 0-0 halfway through the second period. And I still like the way Martin Jones has played. I think he's still definitely been very solid. I just think Grubauer had the game of his playoffs in Game 4. So I still will lean to San Jose because they're at home, and I still think they're the better team. Am I feeling confident about taking the minus 140? No, I still think that's heavy juice. But Sharks in regulation, I should say, I still think makes sense. Until I actually see one of these games go to overtime, I don't see much point of taking a game or a team, I should say, on the money line instead of taking them in regulation. Because so far the Sharks and the Avalanche have played 7 games this season, and none of them have gone to overtime. So I think if you're going to take San Jose or Colorado, you might as well do it in regulation for an extra, value. But in terms of the over-under, I know it's at 5.5, and people are going to lean to the over. I'll actually lean to the under here. I do like how both goalies have. It's like Colorado has kind of changed up their strategy in order to combat the deep roster that San Jose has. They've been forechecking a lot more. They've been trying to slow the pace, dump it in, get pucks deep, and I think that will lead to less goals. If Grubauer and Jones play anywhere like they did in Game 4, this game will easily go under, and I will lean to the under, and I will lean to the Sharks personally in regulation. But other than that, it's also a very big day for May 4th as we have the Kentucky Derby, which is coming up. And some people asked me a couple of days ago what my thoughts were on the Kentucky Derby, and I never ended up addressing it. One person asked for what type of superfecta that I liked in that, and superfectas are almost impossible to predict. But in terms of what wager I will be having on the Kentucky Derby, and just remember that this is just my opinion here. I'm not like a full-on horse handicapper. I do it occasionally for fun. In terms of who I think is going to win the race, I will be leaning to either game winner or improbable, and I think that they will finish first and second with Baffert as the trainer for both of them. So for me, my play on the Kentucky Derby will be an exacta box on improbable and it's going to be on improbable and on game winner as an exacta box, and that's going to be my play. Sorry if you wanted some more precise, thoughts on the Derby, but overall, it's not really my strong suit. I have gone to the Belmont each of the last 2 years, but that was more just for fun and for recreation purposes. So in terms of that, whether or not you actually like any other horses, don't let my opinion discourage you. But I definitely think, in my opinion, this is a 2-horse race between Improbable and Game Winner. And I think that they will finish first and second. So the play will be on the exacta box with the two of them. It's on a play of the day. That's just my personal hunch. But with that being said, that's going to do it for this installment of Scott's Selections here on Saturday, May 4th. And good luck to all of you and your respective bets.